back to the channel. For those who haven't been here before, my name's Anna. That's Steve. That's Mia. That's
And I'm nobody. No.
Okay, this is our new series for October, Hauntings of Dartmoor. So we're going to investigate, which just means having a little look around, and tell you a story, some of the legends out here on Dartmoor. And we'll start with probably one of the most famous ones, which is Kitty Jay's grave. Okay, so I'm going to tell the story of Kitty Jay's grave. So Kitty Jay's grave is a final resting place for a maid, I think probably a couple of 100 years ago. She was pregnant by a local farmhand apparently, and because she was unmarried and that was not a great thing back then, she committed suicide. And because back then, if you committed suicide, you weren't allowed to be buried in like graveyards or churchyards. So they buried her body at the nearest crossroads, which is here. And the legend behind this is that every day, without fail, fresh flowers appear on the grave. And there are fresh flowers there today, and no one really knows who's doing it. I think back in the 50s, there was quite a famous author lived close by, which was a bit eccentric, and people thought it was her, but she's been there for years now, and flowers still appear there every day. If you drive past here late at night, people have reported seeing a black figure like hunched over the grave as well. And it's just worth pointing out that they have dug up this grave before and they have found bones in there and then reburied the bones. So it's definitely a final resting place for someone. Legend has it that it wasn't long after the burial that strange events started taking place. On certain moonlit nights, a dark figure could be seen kneeling beside the sad little mound with a bowed head in its face, buried in its hands. Nobody's been able to say if the figure was male or female because it was always wrapped in a thick black cloak. There are two schools of thought of who that ghostly apparition is. Some say it's the spirit of one of those responsible for driving Kitty from the farm, and others say it's the soul of the faithless farmer's son who as punishment has been sent to stand vigil over the grave of his victim and his unborn child. One of the locals shared her story with me about a visit she paid at night time to the grave about 4 years ago. She visited the grave with a friend, and as a bit of a joke, they left a sign on the grave saying Elton John does it, loves Sherlock Holmes. This was making a crack about Elton John's recently reported outrageously high flower bill. When they got back to the car, a mist quickly descended and the car gauge dropped to empty, although the tank had been half full previously. They were worrying about whether they would make it home and a bit freaked out. On arrival back, the friends discovered her mobile phone was missing, although she hadn't used it at the grave. It was decided there was only one place she could have left it, so they were forced to drive back. Sure enough, the phone was there, placed exactly in the centre of the joke sign. By now, thoroughly creeped out and no longer feeling comical about it, the local retrieved the sign. When they got back in the car and drove off, the mist quickly lifted. At the same time, the petrol gauge returned to half full. Out of all of the Dartmoor legends, Kitty Jay's grave is definitely the most popular. Her story and haunting has made its way into almost every visitor guidebook and any book written about Dartmoor. The grave has become a must-do for Dartmoor visits. The daily appearance of fresh flowers still continues, yet nobody is ever seen leaving them. No matter what time of year, there are always flowers, posies or greenery sat on the lonely mound. Thankfully, the practice of crossroad burials were abolished in 1823 by an Act of Parliament, and suicides were allowed to be buried in churchyards. Let me know in the comments below if you've ever visited Kitty Jay's grave, and have you seen fresh flowers there? Or maybe a dark figure leaning over the grave, crying into his hands.
Rest in peace, Kitty.